This video will cover the Krebs cycle / citric acid cycle. So if you recall from glycolysis, you had three products of glycolysis. NADH, ATP, and pyruvate. The pyruvate is what enters the citric acid cycle. And I'm abbreviating citric acid cycle CAC. So at beginning of citric acid cycle, pyruvate undergoes a reaction. It pyruvates 3 carbons to form a molecule called acetyl-CoA, or acetyl coenzyme A. And this is 2 carbons. So what it actually loses is a carbon dioxide. This is one of the reasons a product of respiration overall is CO2. Every time we breathe, we release CO2. One of the reactions is this reaction at the beginning of the citric acid cycle. So this molecule, acetyl-CoA, then enters the cycle. And it's called a cycle because the product of the cycle combines with another acetyl-CoA, and the cycle continues again. It goes in a circle. There's a lot of reactions within the cycle. It's a little complicated, so we're not going to go into the cycle at all. The main takeaway I want you to know from the citric acid cycle is what is the objective of it? What is the point of your body doing the citric acid cycle? So I mentioned there are 3 total steps to respiration. Hopefully at this point you remember. Glycolysis, citric acid cycle, oxidative phosphorylation. When we cover oxidative phosphorylation, you'll see the importance of the electron carriers NADH. So the main objective of the citric acid cycle is to produce NADH. So the main objective of the citric acid cycle is to produce NADH. So here I'm going to list the products of the citric acid cycle. So these are the molecules that leave the cycle, that don't stay within the cycle. 3 NADH. Remember, this is an electron carrier. Carries 2 electrons. 1 FADH2, which is also an electron carrier. So NADH, what it stands for is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. There's a reason we use an abbreviation. It's a mouthful. FADH is flavin adenine dinucleotide. You don't need to know those. You just need to know NADH and FADH2 are electron carriers. You also get out 1 ATP, so you get a little energy out of the citric acid cycle. But again, most of the energy you'll end up getting in respiration comes from the 3rd step. And the 3rd step is powered by these 2. Again, this will all make sense once we get all 3 stages covered. Then everything will connect. So if you're feeling a little bit like I'm not certain what's going on right now, that's okay. It'll all make sense once we study them as a whole, once we get to all 3 cycles, or all 3 stages. You also produce 3 CO2, but the CO2 again is just a waste product. Your body doesn't use it, but it's a product of the citric acid cycle. So what do I want you to know about the citric acid cycle? What could you see on your quiz next class? You could see a question, what gas is produced in the citric acid cycle? CO2. Carbon dioxide gas is produced in the citric acid cycle. You could be given, what are the products of the citric acid cycle? NADH, FADH2, ATP. You don't even have to put CO2 if you don't want to. The way I'd probably word the question would be, what are the products that the body uses? In which case you would put those 3. For glycolysis, what are the products and what are the reactants of glycolysis? Does glycolysis require oxygen? Think stuff like that for the quiz. Nothing too complicated. Just the basics of each of these 2 steps that we talked about. So again, citric acid cycle. We're producing electron carriers that will carry the electrons to oxidative phosphorylation. All right, so remember, study for your quiz, 15 points on the basics of what we went over today. Fill out the worksheet. If you know the stuff on the worksheet, the quiz is going to be very similar to the questions on the worksheet. So do the worksheet, study for the quiz, and make sure you finish your project by Thursday and bring in your cell model and the document with all the organelles and their descriptions to class Thursday. See you then.